Thank you. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Show Me You Know Me session. And I want to first start by saying that Sam McKenna won't be on this session. It was a mistake on the Partner Hacker team. I take responsibility for it. However, we do have a Show Me You Know Me expert. A surprise guest, Jill Rowley, is with us, and she is, of course, legendary in the sales and marketing world. And we're so thankful to have her here. And we're also joined with Greg Segal from Alice and Rob Rebels from Superglue. And we're going to be talking about how Show Me You Know Me is important in not just sales, but also in partnerships. We'll be exploring what it truly means to show people that you know them, give first, and whether or not these actions can be automated. So, for those of you who don't know, Show Me You Know Me is a straightforward concept where when you're doing any kind of outreach or relationship building, we can't have a generic message. You need to show people that your message is personalized to them and relevant to them, or else it will fall flat. It will just be another piece of noise out there. So you need to show people that you did your research and that you care about them responding, not that they are just another person in a spreadsheet. And this relates to partnerships because you have to build a relationship from the beginning, and you're always managing relationships through your partners with their customers or their prospects. So the Show Me You Know Me ethos is baked into partnerships as much as it is in sales. So, Jill, I want to start with you. I want you to tell me about how trust is better established through the Show Me You Know Me method. And if there's examples where people have reached out to you and they either did or did not do this, how did that make you feel? And how did you respond? Why is it so important to build trust? What are your thoughts, Jill?
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'm excited to be here with Rob and Greg. And thanks for putting me in the game last minute. So I believe that, and I've said this many times, to be interesting to you, Will Taylor, I have to be interested in you. And so I need to demonstrate that interest. And so really what I want to do is try to figure out as much as I can about you, your background, any commonality that we have, passions that we share. That's from the human personal perspective, but also like, what's your business? What are you trying to accomplish? Who are your customers? Who are you trying to reach? And then just make it that when I open up with someone from a connection invite perspective, I'm really making it about them, not 22 years in SaaS. I've worked at Salesforce, Eloqua, Marketo. It isn't about me. It's really about them. That's first. That's making that deposit, right? I've done a little research. I understand who you are. I care about who you are. Let's connect.
I love it. And Greg, why do we think this is so important at the start of a relationship? What happens if we're not doing this, especially when it comes to a partnership where I know firsthand that every idea sounds good in a partnership situation, but it's the way you frame it and the way you focus on it. Why is it important in your mind to start with this method in any kind of relationship in partnerships?
Well, nice to be here as well, by the way, Will and Jill and Rob. So I'll piggyback off of what Jill was saying is that, first of all, we're not robots. Let's just put it that way, right? We're not numbers. You said that when you started off here, Will. And people have two different capacities that they want to work within. One is the personal side, which is where trust is built, and the professional side is where you're actually trying to help somebody out. So it's all about giving to them and understanding how you're actually going to be able to help them. And in the context of anything, as two humans are trying to get to know each other, it's all about building that relationship because that is the foundation of everything you're doing to build trust. And if you're just there, just trying to solve somebody's problem from a professional perspective, they're not really looking at you as a human being. So you have to bring that personal element of it as well to show that you care. And that's where you start to actually build that emotional and psychological bond that you're having with them. And the thing about partnerships is that it's a bi-directional relationship where typically people think of relationships in business as one way. It's a seller to a buyer. But in the case of a partnership, you're both the seller and the buyer if you treat it the right way, because you're both bilaterally trying to help each other out with a similar goal and similar objectives as you're actually trying to drive forward.
I love it. So, Rob, I know you are an expert yourself at this. Even upon first meeting you, our first conversation, I mean, you show up with a smile. I feel good talking to you. You're, always super curious. Why is it so important to have that mentality, especially in partnerships, from your experience and all the partners you've worked with?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for for inviting me to this, and for the kind words. I think, I mean, very often we get carried away, right? We talk to a lead, we talk to a partner, and we have tunnel vision. We want, we want to close deals, we want to drive revenue and all of this stuff. So we're very focused on our interests, and we forget about the other person, right? And like taking that step back, thinking about their interests and how we can add value for whoever our counterpart is, changes the dynamic, right? Like, and ultimately, I mean, it makes you more successful, but it's so hard to change your mindset and how you interact, and then taking these steps to think about, like, I like what you said, Greg, right? You think about the person, so it's like what is that person? What are their interests? What are they excited about? You think about, I then think about their job role, like what is the thing that they try to achieve in their job, like how can I help them achieve that goal with obviously my solution, and then the company, right? Like who do they work for? What are their interests? How does that play into the equation? And very often we just put people into buckets and we feel like we're good, and that's just not the case, and it's not authentic. It doesn't work anymore.
The person first for the genuine connection, and then focus on the business stuff, because anyone can help us with business stuff at the end of the day. For the most part, there's some minor differences, but we're going to stand out when we focus on the other person. And so how can we operationalize this? How does this actually manifest when we're engaging? Greg, I'll pass to you first and foremost. I know obviously Alice is a corporate gifting platform, but there's something unique about it, and it focuses on the person. Why is that an important part of your go-to-market and your ethos as a company when approaching prospects, partners, or really anyone who's on the receiving end?
Yeah, so I'll start off with just the concept, which I think is important to understand, and why, before we started here, Jill was going on your rant, which I totally appreciated, which is like people are just sequencing and cadencing people to death, right? And you start off, Will, with everybody's a name in a spreadsheet. The problem is that if you look at how people sold, back in the 40s and 50s, like you going door to door, you first figure out and look on the walls. Oh, like, what are your kids doing? Oh, blah, blah, blah. Like you start to get to know the person because you're trying to build that trust factor for them. And the problem is that we've taken technology and we've automated the activities, but you haven't automated the emotional and psychological intelligence that you need to actually be able to create the bonds, on a one-to-one level with these folks. And so it became, the next step was, well, we're going to create personas. And then it's like, okay, well, what about the people behind the personas? So just using that as the concept, the whole idea around Alice was that you can email, you can LinkedIn, you can call, you can text people to death. Those are cheap methods, right? That doesn't cost you money. When you put monetary investment between two people and you invest in that relationship, it automatically creates a different psychological and emotional bond between those two people. And gifting, if done right, it has the DNA to actually make that connection happen because of that monetary amount that's happening between people. But yet in the corporate world, you're seeing all these people basically spread crap to everybody. I'm a crazy fitness guy, nutritional nut, Nina, I see everybody's on, folks are in the chat right now. Like they know me, yet I still get, even to this day, brownies and cookies and all this crap that like, it does not resonate with me, which has a worse effect than if you were just to email me with like a cadence or a sequence that's on there. Now, the benefit of gifting, just to turn it back to this, is that the way you build this is you understand that it's about the utilization and what that other person wants. And the way that we've built Alice specifically was, how do you create a marketplace built on interests so that if somebody accepts something, like if I send Jill, something that's something nice, like an Ember mug or something, and she exchanges for BarkBox, what's my first question I'm going to ask her the next time I talk to her? I'm going to be like, oh, what kind of dog do you have? Now it's a fundamentally different type of conversation that we're going to have than not. So that power of gifting unlocks the personal, hence the t-shirt, of course, iPropel, that's there. And And then you have to figure out, you have all these other tools that can help you with the professional side, which there's millions of different, tools that are out there that are there. But gifting is fundamentally unique in terms of how you can integrate it into the go-to-market strategy, if done right. And you don't need
Fantastic.
a platform to do that, but scaling it is obviously why, we built the technology.
Yeah, and I can resonate with what you said about receiving the brownies. I still have a package that was a gift, and it was wonderful, but I haven't eaten it for the last 6 months because it's a bag of candy, and like it's very sweet that I received it because it was more of an out of the blue kind of thing, and they weren't trying to sell me anything, and I only wish that I could have enjoyed it more. Which, if it was personalized, I would have, and it would have stood out a lot more. So, Jill, how would you say that people can operationalize this today? What's, I would say, your number one tactical tip of people who are boots on the ground doing sales or partnerships? How do they stand out with this ethos of show me, you know me? What is the one thing that people can do when they do have to send that LinkedIn message or that email? How can they best approach it, in your opinion? What's worked on people reaching out to you?
Yeah. Acknowledging that you've read something, heard something, learned something, common connection, but you've got to be careful on that, right? That we have common connections. What is the connection that's most relevant to both of us? So you can't do the scratch the surface, right? Like, I shouldn't just reach out to someone because I see that they're ASU alumni. Both of my boys went to ASU. So go Sun Devils is awesome, but that's not really enough, right? No one's going to connect with me just because my sons went to ASU and they went to ASU. So what's the next level down? I really always say Google is still my best friend. Like, I'll go to Google and I'll search Greg Segal podcast, right? Because I want to see if Greg's actually done a podcast. That's one example of using Google, not just using LinkedIn, because now everybody's trained on how to, scour LinkedIn for things to make the opening. Maybe it's something that I've even gone to, now that TikTok and Instagram are more acceptable channels in B2B, like go to TikTok or go to Instagram. Sometimes they've even gone to Facebook, not to be creepy, but just to get a little bit more context into what this person cares about.
Amazing. And just like Alexis was asking in the chat, what is your dog's name? Like, trying to pull apart those pieces of information, you could find it potentially on something like Facebook. And so that's interesting. Whenever I've thought about doing outreach, now that I've been in the space, and of course I know Sam McKenna, shout out hashtag Sam Sales Consulting, love the content. It has influenced me where when I'm reaching out to people, I do Google them, just like you said, Joe. I'm going to search their name and podcast. And the reason that you want to start your message with, hey, I really appreciate that you did this podcast. Here's what I learned. That is going to be more relevant to your message. And also it's going to give that person the appreciation that everyone wants. Everyone wants to be appreciated. And so if you're opening with that and it's relevant to, the topic that you're eventually going to be talking about, then it immediately catches their attention. They feel good. And it's also relevant in a business sense. So there's that compulsion to respond as well. And so, Rob, I know you have a tool focused on automation, and that can generally get a bad rap when it comes to trying to keep things personal. But what's your take on how automation can actually help enable the show me, you know me? What are your thoughts on, how you've set up the platform, but still keep it human with all of the outreach?
Yeah. So ultimately what we do to help automate like partner engagement is, and we thought about this a lot, is I think it's not black and white. It's not automation or no automation, right? Like you don't put stuff on autopilot and then you just lean back and this robot does stuff for you. I think smart automation should be like this Iron Man armor, right? Like something that enhances people's ability to interact with others at scale. So there are different types of interactions, right? There are repetitive interactions that may feel very personal, very relevant for somebody, but that they happen all the time with everybody you interact with, and you should think about automating that stuff in order to win back time to focus on the important interactions, to do the research that Jill talked about, right? Like that takes time. Like Googling somebody, listening to their podcast, etc., that takes time, and people need to have that time, especially in partnerships. Like people are totally overloaded. Like, and it's going to get worse, right? Like partner ecosystems are going to grow 10x, and headcount isn't going to grow that much. So we need to figure out where automation can help, where it's how we can use automation in a manner that is still very personal, and there are different dimensions to do that stuff. So there is the type of personalization that we talked about, right? You know somebody dog's name, and how to bring that, leverage that in a conversation, show that you understand them. But then there's other information as well that can be operationalized via automation, like time-based information. Like if somebody has been partner of yours for a year, and you send them a message, hey, it's been a year, this is our anniversary. This can easily be automated, but it feels very special. It's like if we go into the sales world or into CRM, like birthday campaigns in CRM are usually the most powerful campaigns. They're not very difficult to automate, but it feels we have to think about it like, what does the other person feel like? Like, does it feel relevant, important, thoughtful, meaningful for them? And sometimes we can achieve that via automation. Sometimes we can't. So I think it's about the right balance between the tools and not one or the other.
So using it to enhance it, not to replace it. You can never replace that personalization and that relevancy and the human element, but you can enhance it. I like that. So Rob, tell me more about how this ethos of Show Me You Know Me enters into the partnerships world, specifically with co-selling. And I'll preface this with, a pretty bad example where we had our sales team at an unnamed company would be introduced to a referral. And what they would do is they would say, hey, great to meet you. Here's my calendar link. There was no Show Me You Know Me done. And I think I just saw some eye rolls there from Jill. It's like, it's painful even to hear about where there's this warm lead. It's being served to them, on this silver platter, for lack of better words. And they don't do that personalization because they think it's easier. Rob, what are your thoughts on how Show Me You Know Me enters into the partnerships world, and why perhaps it's even more important in the co-sell situations?
Yeah, I think very often in the co-sell situation, like you have a partner, they have a lead, they hand that over to, let's say, the partner department, they hand that leads to the AE, and the AE is like, great. They don't care who shared that lead. They just run with it. And they just, like, again, tunnel vision. They want to close their deal. They have their interests in mind. They might take the Show Me You Know Me approach when it comes to the prospect, but they totally ignore that there's a third party that has contributed, that has put their reputation on the line, and they want to be involved too. They have interests as well that need to be accounted for. So I think that's a thing in like these more complex situations where we have different stakeholders. It's not easy to make everybody feel special, rather than making this partner just feel like a service provider. Like, okay, thank you for that lead. I'm going to go with it, and I'm not going to even invite you or update you on what's going on. And that backfires. I think that's where we need to figure out new ways how to do this, and it's hard. I mean, how do I get the third person on board? How do I need to coordinate like my interests? What do they want? I need to ask them questions as an AE, right? Like I need to not just ask the prospect a question, I need to ask the partner a question. And I learned that when you do that, and you're literally like, hey, thanks for that intro. By the way, what are your interests? What is the stuff that you need? What can I do for you in this conversation where I'm going to try to close that deal, but is there anything that I can help you with? And that changes the dynamic. And if that's done right, it's beautiful, because like really good stuff happens.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the relationship chain there, where it's like there's so many different relationships on the line for that interactions. It's not just, the sales outreach to the prospect and it's one-to-one, and, they can burn that all day technically if they wanted to. It's a relationship with your partner and your partner's customer. And then also the AE has the relationship with the prospect as well. And so there's this triangle relationship. And so, Jill, we have to address the eye roll. What did it make you feel when you heard that? And what would you do differently in that situation? Or how would you coach that salesperson even?
Yeah, I mean, I get it all the time. And even when I do events like this, right, I get the generic LinkedIn invite. And just because like you saw me at this event and we have shared interest in terms of partnerships and co-selling and co-marketing and dark social and all these things that we're talking about, sending me a generic LinkedIn invite, I don't like, I'm not looking at it in real time. So I don't know that you were here at PLX and that something I said resonated. I don't know that. So I even today, like, we'll get these generic invites and it's like, it just makes me sad. And then they'll say something really interesting and we'll make this connection. And then the next note is, I'd love to hop on a call and give you a demo of our product. It's like, I'm not into the tech stack today, right? I'm into the category evangelism. And when I was in MarTech and very interested in the tech stack, needed to know how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. But I don't care about your new feature release necessarily. I care about how do we evangelize the category? How do we find the people who are the movers and shakers in the category? Not I don't need to see a demo of your product.
There you go. So if you are introduced to Jill, do not try and sell your product. You want to focus again on, what does Jill care about? What does Jill talk about? What is she thinking about? What's relevant to her? That is how you will capture her attention. So anyone in the chat, if you're thinking, I'm going to reach out to Jill after this, you have the answer. You just need to take action now.
I keep thinking about, I try to remember what I tried to show you our product, Jill. I think you said no, I tried it. But you're right. You're right. It's not like very often that's right. It's we're all still learning, right? Like and every day I have these interactions where I'm like, shoot, like that just wasn't how it should be. Like I slipped into the wrong mode, right?
Yeah.
And when I push back, like I do try to politely push back. Sometimes I just don't answer because it is no, you missed the mark. But Rob, we're still buddies. It's not like you weren't like a lot of other people in terms of the other thing that really drives me nuts is someone I've been connected to for a long time. 10 years later, we've had no communication. 10 years later, they're looking to make their next career move. And they come to me and they send me the resume.
Like, I love that point.
Dude, it's been 10 years. I have no idea what you're up to. And by the way, I'm not really plugged into the marketing ops demand gen world anymore. So I'm probably not going to be able to help you. And it's also been 10 years. Come on.
So one of the funny things I heard, two things I'll say here. One is I've heard the term pitch slapped. That's my new favorite term, where basically everybody's just pitch slapping everybody, where it's like, cool, we connected. Awesome. You're my best friend. Here's my product. It's like, come on, The other thing that I just, chime in there is that it used to be a game about attention, and now it's more about how you actually driving action. And it has to start back with that relationship in terms of getting to know somebody and adding value, right? Like there's a million different ways that people talk about it. Gary Vee talks about the, jab, 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 right hook type of thing. You have all these other folks that are always about like, how do you give and make sure you're constantly giving to that person until you need it. My favorite anecdote was, I read this probably 20 years ago, and it was in some book, probably the last book I've read. But it was basically this person had 2 jars, and every day they had marbles in one of the jars. And it was basically, what have I been given, and trying to move the marbles every day to the other jar, as you get through that, because by that point you have all this, reciprocity being built up, and all this giving that you've done to other people. And that comes back to you when you need it at the most, rather than going in right for that ask right away.
It's great. Yeah. You build a relationship first, and then you get thing, right? And
Yep.
that's what we forget. We do when it comes to partners, we do a lunch and learn, we forget about them, and then we, 9 months down the road, we realize they have they work with a customer we want to get access to, and then we ask them for that, and just what you described, Jim, doesn't work.
The partner thing too is really important to call out here, because it's even, that relationship is even tighter. A lot of times in sales, it's like, I have the relationship, I got my sale, and then it's sort of like, okay, I'll check in, as necessary. But a partner is like almost on this like exacerbated timeline where you're constantly having to keep build more and more and more and more. And that's like, you have to totally throw away old school. I mean, these like new school techniques where everything's all about, overly automated, abilities to connect with people. It's like, how am I really getting to know the folks that I need to? And then at different layers and different levels based on what their needs are. And there's some people you're not going to. We called it, somebody talked about this early on. We call it the 5 to 9. Like, how do you get to know somebody's 5 to 9, not just their 9 to 5? And they were like, well, sometimes you might get a Darth Vader, who doesn't want you to know anything about their personal life, as you go forward here. So how do you connect with them? Well, they are the type of personality you need to really anchor more on the professional side of things. Other people are more on the emotional and psychological things. You just got to be able to balance those things really well in the partner world, especially where it's this constant growth, vector that you have to keep improving.
That was wonderfully said. And I think we're coming up on time, so I am going to end it there. Anyone who wants to connect with our speakers, now how to do it. Of course, give them something to show that you care about, engaging with them and why a relationship actually matters with this person and you. Same goes for your partners and any kind of introduction. Thank you so much for attending this session, and go check out the other cool PLX stuff. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Greg. And thank you, Jill, for this amazing session.
Thanks a lot, team.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thanks all. Bye.